All right. Welcome back, listener, to the Forest Brothers podcast. It's your boy, Musa Chris Don, back on the cut, joined by my two brothers, Nkosi and Samson. What up, brothers? Let me start with the brother Samson, and then over to the brother Nkosi to say, what up to the listeners out there? So over to you, Samson.
Welcome, dear listeners, to the Forest Brothers podcast. Here with my two brothers, Musa, Mangoro. Great to see you guys. Let's get into it, gents.
What's up, beautiful listeners? This is the First Brothers podcast. We're back. I'm not looking forward to this episode, but as a person who's very honest, I think we need to have this episode regardless because we're true to the people that listen to the Forest Brothers podcast.
And listen, if you're wondering, why is Mangoro so solemn? Why is he saying he's not looking forward to this podcast? It's because this episode in particular is talking about Chelsea. And yesterday, Chelsea played Aston Villa and lost 2-1. The brothers Marco Asensio and Marcus Rashford both collaborated to score goals. I believe Rashford assisted both of Asensio's goals. And this is, I believe, Chelsea's. They've won 2 games in 8, from what I heard, or they've won 1 game in 6, or something like that. But anyway, Chelsea is on a bad run, and Cole Palmer. Oh my days. What has happened to that? What has happened to that man? He's like fallen off the face of the earth. But anyway, that is what the podcast is about today. And let me actually just throw it to the boy Mangoro so that he can talk about Chelsea, because there's a lot happening off the pitch as well. In terms of, I know there's some protests that are apparently taking place, or some disgruntled fans are not happy with the way things are going over there at Chelsea. And then obviously, I'm not sure if Chelsea fans are disgruntled with Chelsea's current form. It sounds like people are just happy to be in top 6. And I don't know what the sentiment is about your current form. And but it seems like Maresca has just been trying to temper expectations. And maybe that's kind of what I've known. But anyway, I'll hand it over to the resident Chelsea fan to update us on what's happening there at Stamford Bridge. Over to you, Mangoro.
So, big picture, it's a lot of things happening. So, as Mutsa mentioned there are protests. So, protests, from what I've read and from what I've been following the last couple of weeks, are centering around a couple of things. One, what is the target this season? Because that wasn't laid out at the beginning of the season. So fans are also of that opinion of what is the target that was set forth this season. That's like their biggest thing. That's number one. Number two is, what is the direction that the team are taking with the recruitment and how everything is being handled, from what happened in January and what happened last summer. Like when you bring in a ton of players and then you don't use them half of the season. Now in the second half of the season, you loan out half of them, and then now when you have injuries, you have to bring in kids, whereas you had these players prior to that. So that's the other thing. The other thing is a hike in season tickets and the ticket prices. So a lot of fans are unhappy about that. The fourth one is related to the stadium plans. There's a lot of talk about moving away from Stamford Bridge or rebuilding Stamford Bridge. Fans don't have a clear idea. And then fifth, which is the most important one, is just the state of play on the field, because that's what gets people talking. What's happening on the field, and where the team was at the beginning of the season, how they moved along, and then now where they are currently today. And that's just generally what happens with like a lot of teams, where when you're performing well at the beginning of the season, there was the whole talk of the spat between the owners. We started winning games, people didn't say anything. Then when we started dropping points and doing all sorts of things, we were now at a point where people are like, how? There at Chelsea, let's talk about all these other issues that are happening, which generally happens for the most part at most clubs. And I think for me personally, I think the concerning point started at, it's a very convoluted viewpoint that I have, but it's just my take, and you can tell me if I'm right or wrong. I think the other aspect is the arrogance of the manager, I think, also has something to do with it because Robert Sanchez was making a lot of mistakes. He's been making mistakes the whole season, but then the manager would come out and still back him even after those mistakes and say things like in press conferences, like they'd ask him about he's going to drop Robert Sanchez, and he'd say things like it's going to be Robert Sanchez plus 10 other players. So it kind of doesn't help his situation there. And then he finally dropped him, and then find the form did dip a bit, and like it went up and down. But and then also with that aspect, at that time we were scoring goals, and it was the same kind of like style of play. And then now, when the chances were there, we were scoring them, but the mistakes were also there. The mistakes are not a thing of the recent past. Whereas now, the chances are still there, but then they're not being taken. Now the misses are happening, injuries are happening. So it's been coming for quite a while. The mistakes are still happening there at the back with Sanchez, and Jorgensen made a mistake this past weekend as well. So it's been a lot of things where now it's all culminated into this and the protests and all of the stuff. Which my question is to the fans, like, what is the protest going to achieve? That's my first thing. Maybe there's something. I'm not in the UK in particular, so maybe they'll shed some light on this matter and tell us what exactly is happening. That's number one. Number two is the club even going to entertain these protests? Like, these are American billionaires. For them, this is just another business investment. So for me, like, it's just something to see and trying to think about, like, what exactly is happening. And to give all the Chelsea fans out there the expectation for the season, Maresca came out on Sky recently and said this season the club told them the mandate, I think, was top six. So that was the mandate. And then that's why you always spoke about we're ahead of schedule. Then next season was top four. And then in the third season was to challenge. So Chelsea fans, that was the expectation. Now I'm going based on those were the expectations that were given to him. So that's why I'm not saying anything in terms of like just being upset, because if you set such low boundaries, I know the teams around us are quite terrible, and we could literally take this opportunity to finish in the top four, as I've mentioned in previous episodes. So it's honestly a lot there, Chelsea, and it's still there still needs to be more recruitment over the summer. In terms of all the other thing people are talking about is signing experienced players, not these children. Fine, I like children and all, like in terms of like the players we've signed, going young in terms of the kind of players that we signed.
Children as in young
So,
players,
yes.
just as an asterisk,
Hey.
not actual children. But I just wanna quiet my girl.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. Like, I wasn't even thinking of anything outside of that. Like,
Yeah,
the kind
other
of
people
players that
might
we signed.
just, you know.
Okay. I'm sorry, listeners, if you kind of thought of that. That's not what I was saying. But all in all, I was just talking about the kind of players that we're signing. So there was a particular graphic that we have the youngest squad in the Premier League. So that was what people were complaining about the most, and this is what's happened in the past couple of years with this new system and the new people that we have in the building. So all in all, it's as I've mentioned and as I've spoken here in my monologue here, I've told you what is happening there at Chelsea, and hopefully it gets better. That's just my hope, or like we just see how the rest of the season pans out. Hopefully the teams around us are just more terrible than us. Then we pretty much get better after that.
I just have two quick questions. The first one: what happened to the shirt sponsor thing? Did you guys finally get a shirt sponsor? And number two, in what way are people actually trying to protest? Are people like doing in the streets, banners at the club, at the stadium? Are people like not trying to go to games? In what way are people actually trying to protest?
To your first question, so there was talks around the front of shirt sponsor thing, I think in November and December with a couple of companies. I think Qatar Airways and I think Riyadh Air and I think another, I forget the third company. Well, I think the main challenge was they were mainly trying to sign the typical Chelsea contract 10-year deal for a front of shirt sponsor for, I'd say, like, but then the stipulation was being in the Champions League for those companies, and like now right now there isn't. Maybe they're also trying to squeeze more money out of them because at that time we're sitting in what, second or third, so that's what they were trying to do, and then maybe sign for half the season this year. So that was the aspect of the front of shirt sponsor. The sleeve sponsor also was another problem where that contract, I don't know if it ended or it was for like 6 months. Now we look at the second half of the season. There's a different sleeve sponsor from the one that was there at the beginning of the season. So that's pretty much what's happening. To your second question, from what I hear with the protest, it's going to be, from what I've seen and read, it's going to be a walkout at the stadium with banners and everything, not the training ground. I don't think they'd go to the training ground because the message wouldn't be heard loud, because players go to training in the morning. If you come in the afternoon, the players won't be there. And then they know when you're coming to protest, that they wouldn't come to the training ground. They would just tell everyone not to come in. Then you go to protest at the training ground. There's no one. But at the stadium, it makes more sense because it will also talk to the Stamford Bridge situation, number one, and that's where you make a statement at the stadium, because people think of the stadium, they don't think about Cobham. Like Chelsea, if people say Chelsea fans went to have a protest at Cobham versus they went to have a protest at Stamford Bridge, which one do you remember? That's that kind of situation there.
You know, I was looking at the last 12 games Chelsea have played. And it's interesting because I remember sometime mid-December, Mutsa was talking about Chelsea being potential title challengers. Because I think at that point they were second, they were above Arsenal. And they were in a pretty good run of form. They'd beaten Spurs, then they beat, trying to remember, Brentford. And they'd also beaten Southampton like 5-1, had some pretty big wins in the Conference League. So things were pretty rosy at the time. But I remember saying to you both that the downfall of Chelsea this season is going to be youth and inexperience. And I think that's what we're seeing. I mean, Robert Sanchez aside, and I know he's a big piece of this, but take Robert Sanchez out of it. There's still games where Chelsea could have won, but it's just the lack of discipline, the lack of experience that just doesn't help them. Like, for example, Mangoro, I'm sure you saw this against Aston Villa. You guys are 2-1 down, trying to chase an equalizer in the 90th minute. Both of your holding midfielders, Caicedo and Enzo, are out here trying to get sent off. They're out here making ludicrous challenges in the middle of the park, and it's like, do you guys understand what's going on? Do you guys, and it's like, they don't have that calming presence on the pitch that they used to have, which is why I was always skeptical of this regime when it started, because it's all well and good to have young players to build around, but then they gutted the team of all the leadership and experience it had, which it had a lot of. You had players like Thiago Silva, obviously Antonio Rudiger left, well before, but you had players like Kovacic, you had N'Golo Kante there. You had a proper spine all the way through, and you got rid of them because you wanted to have young players. Ben Chilwell. And again, I'm not bringing up these players to say that these players are world class and they deserve to play every week. I'm bringing them up because you need some level of leadership on the pitch. You even see it with Kukurea. Kukurea is important. He's like one of the most important players on the pitch. And you can see his absence when he's not there. Because, again, it's not because he's amazing, even though I think he's a pretty good left back. It's because mentally he's so much far ahead than any of the players on the pitch. Maresca trusts him to implement what he wants. And Maresca needs that. Every coach needs that, needs a player who is going to be the coach on the pitch. And the more of them you have, the better structured you are, and the better you're able to execute. So I think Chelsea, if they really want this model to succeed, they have to go back and look at the drawing board, because as you can see, they've already started recruiting slightly more experienced players. Robert Sanchez is not a young player. Adebayo is not a young player, but they've had to come in because they need someone of experience. I think Chelsea need to go back into the market and find more experienced players who can be first team contributors and who have, experience at the very top level. Not Robert Sanchez and Tosin. All respect to them, but these guys were thriving at teams that were fighting relegation. Like, you want leaders who have thrived in Champions League games, in World Cup games. That's the kind of experience you want to bring in. So I think until Chelsea add that little bit of experience, that little bit of know-how, they're going to experience seasons like this where, yes, they're very talented. Cole Palmer can have 25 goals, 20 assists. It's not happening for him right now, but, he's very capable. We've seen it. But it's not going to go anywhere if the very next game you lose 2-0, 3-0. Then it's a step forward, 2 steps back. Like, that's not going to get you anywhere. So, yeah, I think they have to go back and look at this model they have.
I was just gonna say, when you brought up Caicedo and Enzo, I think Enzo is supposed to be that leader actually, but it's just that Enzo as well, his head is on the moon, or wherever his head is. But I was gonna say it was a very interesting moment. Like, I was like curious what this rule means, because there was a time when like it was a Aston Villa corner kick, and the ref actually gave Caicedo a yellow card in the box. Like, the kick hadn't taken place yet, and I don't know if they were just pushing each other. But then I was like, okay, if a player is getting a yellow card in the box, doesn't that mean that it's somewhat of a foul type situation? Like, how would you just give a player a yellow card? I don't know if you saw that moment, Mangoro, but what does that mean? Like, what are the rules around that? Like, how are you giving a player a card in the box and that's just it? Like, what does that mean?
It wouldn't be a foul in essence. I did see that situation. Interestingly enough, that was the corner that led to their Aston Villa's second goal. Just to give you context, I think Caicedo was actually the one that actually played Marcus Rashford on in that situation, because when they drew the lines and they did the check, it was Caicedo who had played Rashford on because everyone else pushed out. It wouldn't be a foul, or no, you want to say a penalty or an indirect free kick. One, because the ball wasn't in play at that time, but the yellow card is, maybe it could be, the thing is, we don't get like briefings with the referees after the game. It could have been, my thought was, one, it's interrupting the restart of play because they want to take the corner, they want to score. That's the one option I could think of. The other option I could think of is, throughout the game there have been incidents where like Caicedo has been treading the line of getting a yellow card, and then the ref decides, no, enough is enough. Now I will book you. Those are like the two situations where I think that's where it could possibly happen.
It's just that I'd never seen something like that before. But yeah, I mean, I guess as to Samson's point about leadership on the pitch, I mean, maybe that's one of those reasons. I don't know do you agree with that, Mangora? Like, do you feel like you need more leadership on the pitch? Is it just that, or is it like also an over reliance on Cole Palmer? Is it like decision making? I know Nicholas Jackson is injured, and I feel like maybe that has changed things a bit, because again, did Noni play yesterday? I don't know if I saw Noni Madueke play, but
He's injured.
Yeah, Nkuku was playing. I know I saw Nkuku. But yeah, I don't know. Is it just like the decision making of players as well? I'm not sure what it is, but like, does it just come down to leadership, or is there something else that's happening with these brothers?
Yes, it is true. I think one thing that people also need to keep in mind when it comes to being a team and trying to win a Premier League title, any title in general, is having a strong spine. And I feel like our spine is probably very weak. Like, when you have Robert Sanchez in goal, You don't really have a leader in your center back pairing. You don't have a true leader apart from Caicedo in your middle in the middle of the park. Where up front you don't have a proper striker to score 20, 25 goals a season. When you look at past Premier League champions, they've had strong spines. That's where it starts. That's number one. Number two, I do agree, leadership. Like some of the fouls and things like that that these young players give away. It's like you can see the naivety of a young player, like where the player, for example, when a player is moving away from goal, you go tackle him. He's going away from goal. He's no danger. You go tackle him. You give away a foul. Maybe you get booked. Now it's what? It's a free kick in a dangerous area that now you have to defend. So I think there also is that aspect on like it's just the players in particular, and also as you expect, young players do go through dips, up and down dips. Like when we started the beginning of the season versus now, like you see the trajectory of this is the learning curve for young players. Like you can't expect young players to play they did at the start of the season. Once teams start to figure them out tactically, they won't be they won't have any more answers. So like the young players, like they don't have the experience to see that okay, this team has made this adjustment, we should make this adjustment, and then we'll start to exploit that in terms of like the chance creation and all that good stuff. So I'd say it's a matter of a couple of things, especially like with the players that we have, like some of the passes they make. Because like the perfect example, the perfect two examples that come to mind for me personally are Levi Cole and Malo Gusto. They started off at a very high level at the beginning of the season, but the drop off has been crazy. And you're like, wow, this is a big drop off. But to me, it doesn't surprise me a lot because one, this is their first time actually playing as being the leaders in the team, as being the first choice starters. That's number one. And number two, this is something you definitely expect from a young player, someone who literally came from the academy or who came from France. Like now you're throwing him into this cauldron. Because also the other thing you have to keep in mind, they're not playing for Brighton, for Dortmund, for Aston Villa. They're playing for Chelsea, a former Champions League winner, a team going to the Club World Cup this year. So it's something that you also like have to keep in mind in terms of like what exactly you see from these players. And for me personally, like it's not a surprise. Like I think Cole Palmer actually got a chance. I think like in the second half where it was 1-1, and he was usually buries it. But then now I think he missed it because like we saw what happened then, and that's just generally what happens with young players. They are inconsistent.
Yeah, I saw that. I was actually quite surprised by that. Just a quick point, and then I guess actually, yeah, let me even ask Samson this. So Chelsea plays Southampton next and Leicester, the two easiest teams you can actually play in the league. Like at this point in time, do you see them winning those two? Like I feel like they should at least do that because again, when we spoke about what the actual table looks like for Chelsea right now, they are seventh, and I know Mangori, you're saying that the goal is to be top six. So they have the same point level as Bournemouth, and they're only 1 point behind Man City and Newcastle. So it's possible. Yeah, I mean they just have to. If they win those two games, it's very possible that they could already be. they could even they'll be fourth, or they could even potentially be 6 points if Forest, City, and Newcastle don't do well in these next two games. But yeah, anyway, do you see Chelsea? They should win those two games, right?
Yeah, those two teams are awful, and I see Chelsea winning both games. I think Chelsea will struggle more in the Conference League against is it Copenhagen you're playing?
Yeah.
Because when you play in Europe, you are playing, more often than not, the best of the best in another league. If they're not the best of the best, they're like at least in the top four, the top three of that league. So even at least on form, you're playing a team that has, just as much confidence as you do in your ability. Whereas playing Southampton, Leicester, Ipswich, I mean, we played Leicester last week and we were not good for 80 minutes, but those brothers just broke down. as soon as Marino steps on the pitch. So I expect Chelsea to beat them. I expect them to beat Southampton. And I think the only big challenge will come when they face Arsenal and then Tottenham, then Brentford. That'll be a very tough 3 game period. And probably those are the 3 games that will decide whether Chelsea finish in the Champions League position or not. But yeah, I expect them to win these next 2 games, and hopefully, by the time they face those bigger teams, they'll have some players back from injury. So yeah, we'll see.
So, Mangoro, if you lose those 2 games, are you gonna go fly to UK to protest as well, like Samangara?
Unfortunately, the protest is happening next week, so I will not be
Okay.
flying to the UK. But yeah, losing to both these teams or even dropping points, I think would be criminal business. I think then we'll have to have some serious conversations about Maresca, especially like these 2 games, like the 3 games where I'm like, it would be unacceptable to lose this season. Like now until the end of the season. The 3 home games are Southampton, Leicester, and Ipswich on April 12th. Those 3 games, if they are dropped points or even a loss, even if we get a red card, like we have to win those games. Like those are the 3 games that I've targeted that it would be unacceptable to even think of dropping points in any of them. But all in all, I think what would probably help Chelsea, and from what I've been hearing and different on different platforms, is definitely I think this little break that's coming up. I don't know if it's FA Cup or international break after this game week next weekend. Because the next game will be like March the 8th. I think what will help them is definitely like some players coming back. I hear Buddy Ashile is coming back soon. Romeo will be back, and Wesley Fofana has now started light training. So definitely need more. Number one, we also do need more bodies. So that'll definitely help them, because one thing what I've learned is with Chelsea this season, it was very underrated at the time, but I honestly think Romeo Lavia could be the most important player at Chelsea, more than Cole Palmer. That's just my take. Because when he's there and he's fully fit, he's able to unlock Enzo, he's able to unlock Caicedo, it's able to give Palmer more freedom. So I think Romeo could possibly be the most important player, because when he's been there, we've seen the impact that he's had in terms of like supporting the other players. Because when you have a weak midfield, that's why like there was a lot of talk at the beginning of the season where Maresca was picking to play Caicedo and Lavia without Enzo because of the balance that they were bringing in the middle of the park. Because we saw what they did against Liverpool. That was one game even West Lord came out and said where we had both of them, all 3 of them, and Enzo was playing higher up. And he was like, that's one game where Chelsea, this is one team I've played against this season, where they've passed us off the field. And this is potentially now going to be the Premier League champion. And you've seen when he hasn't been there, how open we've looked, where we haven't had that balance. Even when we're winning games and the other team is coming back, we've seen Maresca introduce someone like Lavia to step in, neutralize everything, and then we see out the game. It's like, it takes me back to like a time where Mourinho used to bring in, especially like in 2004-5, we would be leading 1-0, or like I think later on as well, where we'd be winning 1-0 or winning a game. And then when you see John Obi Mikel about to come on, you know the game was finished at that point. So I think Lavia does have that sort of like impact now at Chelsea. That's how critical he is to the overall team as a whole, because it frees up the attackers to do more. They don't have to do as much defensive duty because, yeah, Enzo can't play there. Enzo doesn't have the legs to run around the field.
Or the intelligence. I feel like that brother cannot read the danger to save his life. He's pretty good in counter-attacking situations. I'll give him that. But yeah, going back the other way, he has a lot to work on, in my opinion. Yeah.
Yeah. Chelsea. I mean, I don't know, man. So I guess we'll see, because yeah, this run of form right now, it's it's not good. Even for my FPL, I'm thinking about dropping the boy Palmer because I don't know what's happening with him. I don't know if it's like a dip in confidence. I don't know if it's like the people in front of him can't score. I don't know if it's even himself. I remember when was that game he scored what 4 goals and a half? Like
Brighton.
That Palmer and this Palmer are two different Palmers. Like I don't know what's happening with the brother, but yeah, I don't know, man. To me, Palmer sometimes is just too laissez-faire. You know, like I don't see enough fire in that brother. Like if the game is hard, I don't know. Sometimes you just don't. Before he used to like, okay, I'm gonna really try, but these days I don't know. He just kind of just hangs around the
I
periphery.
I'd say it's the supporting cast around him. I think they haven't contributed as much. Like they've, I understand that he's a talisman and everything, but like the other players like should contribute more. Madueke, Jackson, Sancho, and Neto, like they should be offering us more. Even Enzo as well. They should be offering us more from a creativity perspective. From when a game is tight, someone who will do something. Because the other thing is that a lot of the teams now play in such a way that if we neutralize Cole Palmer, the chances of us actually winning this game are much higher. Even the lower teams have realized that. So I think there's also a lot of that where now Cole Palmer, he's also a young player. That something we have to remember in that he's also now learning that okay, this season last season people didn't know me. That's why I did so well. Now that they know me, they're planning for me. So it's about that learning step on like how do I take the next step to have more creativity because now people are trying to mark me out of the game. 2v1s, 3v1s. They're now sending a lot of people to come and close me down. How do I then move the next step up in terms of like trying to free another player because when two people are on me, hopefully someone else is making movement around me so that I can then play the pass there and then make the run into the box. So it's also a learning experience for him. He's also a young player, so it just begs the question to see like how these players evolve and improve in these next coming months.
You know, with Palmer, the more I watch him, the more I start to think that maybe this is why Pep let him go. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean that in actually the best way. Because I think he's one of those guys who he kind of, he's one of those guys who he doesn't really fit into like, these big managers who have these very specific tactics, these very specific ways of playing. And then like, you will stay on the right wing and you won't go anywhere. I don't think Cole Palmer thrives when he's restricted like that. I think he's a sort of guy who you just have to let him roam and allow him to feed other people and play off other people. And Pep traditionally has not thrived with players like that unless it's Messi. Because Messi, I think, is the one person he couldn't coach out of doing that. Everyone else he's managed to break down. Anyone with any ounce of flair, he's managed to squeeze out that flair completely. He couldn't with Messi, and I don't think he could with Palmer either. And this is why I thought they made a mistake with Palmer and Foden because I thought what Palmer really excels at is what I'm always wondering why I think lacks from Foden, where it's this ability to number one look for the ball no matter where he's on the pitch. He'll look for the ball, and once he gets the ball, he will drive with it, or he will make a forward pass, or will try to get to a position to shoot. Like he will try immediately to affect the game in any way he can, as opposed to just camping out somewhere and waiting for the ball to come. So yeah, I think the solution to that is obviously time, because like you say, he is a young player. There's some things he has to learn. Like I remember, I think it was the Fulham game. He gave the ball away a few times when Chelsea were in the lead, and it led to a few counterattacks that led to the goals. So, controlling when he goes forward and when he makes those risky passes. But also, he needs teammates who will actually make use of his talents. Because when you have a player like that, who is going to make those dangerous passes, make those dangerous runs, it helps if you have a really top winger making a run, or really top striker making a run. They make his work mean something. Because if he just gets marked out, then like you're saying, it's over. But if he gets marked out and you have players who can exploit the space, then Chelsea will make things happen. So I think they have to go into the market looking for that as well. Players who could complement Palmer.
Yeah, I can
Yeah.
imagine you've busted your ass. You make that defense splitting pass. Nicola Jackson gets that ball, and then he shoots it all. He shoots it to the moon. I'd also be like, hey, you know what?
Yeah.
What am I doing this for?
Yeah, and you'll actually see in the Nico Jackson games when Nico Jackson does that, you'll actually see Palmer. He'll start the game off like passing more. As the game progresses, he'll just shoot because he knows that brother's not going to help him. So, yeah.
One thing
It's out.
I do want to add real quick is actually two things. One is the last couple of games where we've dropped points and everything, it's been a consistent pattern where we score first. If we don't get the second goal, we either lose or draw. And you can date back to, I think, the first game after Everton. I forget what it was. But
Fulham.
like from that game, yeah, Fulham. We scored first. And if you go from Fulham all the way to Aston Villa yesterday, it just tells you exactly where the issue is. If we don't get that second goal, the game is finished for us. That's one. Number two is, so with these, something like that I've learned this season with like a lot of these young players is the matter of they like to judge the game for themselves rather than have the referee. So they'll literally call the foul before it happens, and then they'll stop. And then the game will go on, and then maybe the other team will score or get a chance or things like that. So there's been a lot of occasions like that. I think Cole had a situation like that as well. I think last week against Brighton. This week it was against I think Enzo had a situation like that where he called for a foul, but it wasn't given. The game went on, and it's been happening like throughout the season where a lot of these players have tried to judge the game for themselves and not let the referee actually call it before they actually stop.
Yeah, that can get dicey because that brother Colwell, I feel like is one of the worst defenders in the league. But that's just me. I don't that brother. There's just no defensive acumen in his brain. I don't know what he'd be thinking.
I think it's just the aggression. Again, that just comes with inexperience. Just again, Thiago Silva, as slow as he was, I think he really brought something to that team, that back line, and you see it. Like Colwell next to an experienced defender, I think he'll do something. Just because the yellows he gets, man, you're just like, bro, are you serious, man? Like, because that's really, for the most part, that's the part of his game that just struggles, just the fouls. But, yeah.
That brother be doing too much. Like, even some of the fouls he makes, I'm like, why did you just do that? Like, why did you just add more pressure to your team?
Yeah.
The other thing I do want to add, actually, is, which I think during the protest, I think the owners have to explain to the fans because this has never been done before. Chelsea recently added, I don't know if he's signed or still in talks, Willie Issa. He's a former rugby player, like championship winning rugby player from what I heard. And you ask yourself why they bring in a rugby player to the team. And apparently it's to help with the mindset, championship winning mindset. It's coming in to help the players with that. And for me, I just find that very bizarre that you
Wait, he's coming as what?
I don't know, maybe a mindset coach or something. So
He's not gonna be a player.
No. so like when I saw those news, I was like, okay, which one is this one? So I think that's also something that has to be explained because now when we're sitting here asking ourselves, you're bringing in what? A rugby player to do what? To be a mindset coach. I do understand it's young players and everything, but like this is unprecedented territories that Chelsea are going for now.
I think it's to beat us up if they mess up after the game. Like, sir, there's a rugby player waiting for you in the locker rooms. Like, sir, don't.
Mindset coach.
Mindset coach is crazy. Yeah, no, that was Billy's muscle.
That's
That's
a professional
hold you by the neck. Like, don't. Actually, you know what? I fuck with that. That's actually forward thinking. Like, that's very innovative. Like,
actually, I think we could use one of those at Arsenal too, man.
Exactly. Just to know, it's scary. That you walk in the locker room at halftime. You're having a shit half. That was just in there, like sitting at your corner, and like, hey,
Yeah, at your little
yeah, exactly.
your,
Your
your
little
little
idol.
dresser.
You just see him sitting there, like, hey, Jared, you're about to get a lashing. So, yeah, I feel like it's actually for a thing there by Chelsea. I think you should actually praise them, Mongolia. Praise those owners.
No,
Whoever thought that
no.
idea cooked. That's a cook right there. Was a
It's
cook.
just it's this these American owners. I think because they do similar stuff. I'm sure you guys have experienced this like at your workplaces where like if you have like a workplace retreat, they'll do like these like motivational talks, and they'll bring someone who's a professional motivational speaker, and it's like, and they'll try to like talk to you about your job like they know anything, but and it's all BS. It's all like a
Scam.
mentality and all that. But like,
Yeah.
what Chelsea need is players, bro. Experienced players who can actually play, not a rugby guy. You need someone who's played the game at the highest level. That's what you need. Not some random. I mean,
Yeah,
not
bring
random, but not
former
some.
players like put sign Drogba or something. Like excellent Drogba, come talk to these kids. Bring. I feel like Chelsea has had so many good players over the years. Like bring one of those guys. Why are you bringing a rugby player? That's actually kind of weird. But I don't know. Maybe those guys also don't want to do it. Then they'll be held accountable.
But just really quick there on Sangi's point of the company retreat. It's one thing for someone to come in and speak to the team, motivation for the new year and innovation and things like that once a year. That makes sense. But now for someone to be there every week, like
Yeah,
this guy's
exactly,
gonna be there every week. It's like, come on, guys, why is this guy here?
exactly, exactly. That's what I'm saying. If you can afford that guy's wages, why not just sign some old player, like someone who's played the game? Well, like what's the difference? Like why someone who can actually be in training with the players? Like it's nonsense to me. But anyways.
And the players coming in next summer, all of them are below the age of 20. You have Kendry Pyers, you have Esteval William, you have Mike Penders. Like, all those players are below the age of 20. So, like, you just ask yourself, like, where is the experience coming from? But
Maybe they hope that at some point, Palmer's gonna be the guy with the experience. He's gonna be the all these guys now, like it starts cracking now, but in a couple of years, 2 more, 3 years, they're the guys you're looking at like, yeah, these are experienced squad. So yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's a good plan or not, but yeah, I don't know. Who knows? Who knows? But I don't know. I feel like that's a comprehensive conversation about Chelsea. I don't know if there's anything left. Mangoro, is there anything else burning in your heart about Chelsea right now, or have we covered everything?
I think we've covered everything. I would also want to say that Chelsea owners should start playing FIFA career, EA career mode, or what's that game, Football Manager career mode, because it seems like that's what they're playing. Sign all the best young players and then just try and develop them. Life and that game are two different things. So that's one thing we also have to keep in mind, because like literally what they've deployed over the last 3 years since they've taken over is literally what you would do when you play career mode in these games. And that's literally what they've done in real life, which is not the case. But anyway, listener, thanks for tuning in. This is the First Brothers podcast. On my side, I think I've said everything I wanted to say. And yeah, be sure to do the right things, listener.
Yeah, just to add on, I'm not even sure Football Manager will let you do what Chelsea has been able to do the last few years. Like, those Saudi deals, I don't think Football Manager had that in the code before you guys did it. So, wow, you guys are breaking ground. And yeah, shout out to Chelsea. But, like the man Mangoro said, at some point, you have to stop signing players and build chemistry, build a team. So, we'll see when they start doing that. And hopefully the team turns out well, because it would be a shame if all these young, promising players don't get to fulfill their potential. So we'll see. We'll see. Shout out to Chelsea. Shout out to Chelsea fans. And yeah, catch you on the next one.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not complaining if Chelsea remains trash, so I'm actually quite happy with the situation. So yeah, I mean, long may it continue. And listener, yeah, please do subscribe, comment, tell us in the comments how you feel. We take all constructive, positive, negative, everything, anything you want to get off your chest. Let us know. We'll be there. We'll be there to read it and possibly respond. So with that, listener. Well, thank you so much, and we will catch you on the next one.